Well, folks, President Trump just did the unthinkable. He shook hands with Syria's new leader, Ahmed Al Sharah. This guy's a former terrorist commander who helped overthrow the Assad regime back in December of last year. So, is this a bold step toward peace, or did America just legitimize a wolf in sheep's clothing? The stakes couldn't be higher on this one, and so let's talk about it on today's condensed version of my 1 hour live that I do every day, which you can find here on the YouTube channel. But if you don't have time to watch an hour, you can just watch this one and we'll try to get through it in about 10 minutes. Folks, I've been warning for quite a while that bad actors can custom build biological weapons. It's actually much easier than you think, and it's a real and growing risk these days. Dr. Peter Marks, who's the former FDA vaccine chief, just said the same on CNN. We're not ready. That's why I've teamed with the wellness company. Their contagion emergency kit includes 5 prescription meds like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and Tamiflu, and a nebulizer. These are tools you'll want before a crisis hits, not after. It's easy to get. Just fill out a short form and get it in a week or two. Go to twc.health/hotzone and use the code HOTZONE to save $32 and get free shipping. So be smart, be prepared, and this is only in the United States. We'll see it. First of all, this meeting was a historic first. President Trump met with Syrian leader, I'm not going to call him a president because he's not the president, Ahmed Al Sharah, in Saudi Arabia, along with the Saudi Crown Prince MBS, and phoning it in from Turkey, President Erdogan. They were all present in that meeting. This is the first meeting of US and Syrian leaders in 25 years. Now, this is all part of President Trump's high stakes Middle East tour, in which he's trying to get some business deals accomplished. And he did that yesterday. Signed what he said was a $1 trillion deal with Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure it's quite that much, but it's still a lot. It could create up to 2 million US jobs, and that's a good thing, obviously. But at the tail end of his trip, he met with Al Sharah, who, as I said, was an insurgent commander. There was a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States at one point. He was an insurgent in Iraq during the war there and was captured by U.S. forces and put in jail and was held in prison by U.S. forces for 6 years. And now the president of the United States is meeting and shaking his hand. And we're going to talk more about why I think that might have been a bad idea, but we're going to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt. And I think if you put on your optimist hat, this might actually turn into a good thing. And I'm going to talk about why in just a minute. So, as I said, he was imprisoned in Iraq in 2003. Then just recently, I mean, he was the founder of HTS. So HTS split off from ISIS when the ISIS caliphate fell, or sometime around there. I think HTS has actually been around since 2017. But Al Sharah tried to distance himself from ISIS by shaving his beard a little bit and putting on a suit after he led that sort of stunning offensive in December of last year and ousted Assad after 54 years of Assad family rule. And Syria was not a good place under Assad. They, in the civil war over the last 15 years, they have lost probably upwards of 600,000 people killed and perhaps 7 million people displaced, one of the largest personnel displacements since World War II. Sharah declared himself Syria's interim president in January, but that really doesn't hold much weight because he's not elected. He's just a strongman. He's a thug that took over. And from my own experience being in Syria last week, I can tell you nobody I talked to would ever vote for Al Sharah. And so if there ever were elections, Sharah would not win the election if it was legitimate. Even many in his own Sunni party would not vote for him, possibly because they don't think he's extremist enough. I mean, there's Syrian National Army backed by Turkey. They're just remnants of ISIS. There's actual remnants of ISIS that are still calling themselves ISIS. And then there's HTS, which is split off from ISIS, but they all share the same ideology. They just all hate each other because they don't think each other is quite extreme enough. But suffice it to say that Al Sharah will never become a legitimate president of Syria. And so it's likely that he will never allow elections as long as he's in power. Now, the White House released a statement that says that they presented Sharah with a list of demands. But you have to keep in mind that President Trump walked into the meeting announcing that he was lifting sanctions on Syria, all the sanctions that have been on there for more than a decade that have really crushed the Syrian economy. President Trump preemptively lifted the sanctions before even getting an agreement from Al Sharah. But the demands that the United States made on the new regime, I guess you want to call it, in Syria, are number one, that they join the Abraham Accords and normalize relations with Israel. That would be amazing if they actually would do that. Number two, that they deport all foreign terrorists from Syrian territory. That would be great as long as they don't redefine who is a terrorist, because this is not very specific. And so theoretically, Al Sharah could say, great, all the Kurds are terrorists, they all have to get out. Or all the Christians are terrorists, they all have to get out, something like that. Number three, expel all Palestinian terror groups from Syria. That would be the Hashishabi and the Iranian-backed militias, and Hamas as well, which has its presence in Syria. Now, kicking them out is going to be harder than it sounds because they can very easily melt into the local population and not call themselves Hamas, even if they are working for Hamas. But there's that. And lastly, they demanded that Sharah take responsibility for the ISIS detainees that the Kurds are holding in the east. And that's very problematic because when I drove by those detainee centers where the ISIS guys are being held in places like Hasaka and Kamishli, and all the people there will tell you if Sharah is given control over those people, he will just set them free. And they will once again be at large inside Syria. So again, I'm going to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt on this, but I first want to use a note of caution. And the note of caution is that the world at large expended a large number of lives and a large amount of money, time, and effort to destroy the ISIS caliphate that was declared in 2014-15 across Syria and into Iraq. The Iraqi military lost 70,000 casualties. The Kurdish lost 12,000 dead fighting ISIS, helping to destroy them. The United States backed them up on that. And so did, the Syrian government fought them. The Russians fought them. The Turks fought them. Everybody fought against ISIS and destroyed that caliphate. But there are still tens of thousands of those guys still around. And a lot of them today call themselves HTS. And so by legitimizing Al Sharah and his HTS goons, who are right now implementing Sharia law across the area that they control, just like the Taliban in Afghanistan, we very well could be handing them the caliphate that they were unable to implement when they called themselves ISIS. And they're realizing that all they have to do is just put on a suit and change their name and say the right things, and they get what they wanted all along. That is the risk that we're taking here. Now, lifting sanctions is not that big a deal. It certainly could help in this case. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. And those sanctions can be put back on anytime very quickly at the stroke of a pen if necessary. So I don't have a problem with Trump lifting the sanctions on Syria. And I think that leads us to the optimistic tone I want to strike here. If we give President Trump the benefit of the doubt and we realize he's taken a big gamble, he's reaching out to people who traditionally would be our enemies, not just our adversaries, but our enemies, and offering them an olive branch by lifting the sanctions. What that could do is it could really make life better for people in Syria, and it could make them realize what they're missing. That, wow, if we stop cutting people's heads off and acting like idiots, from the 7th century, we actually get to have nice things again. We actually can have financial, stuff and a better economy, and life will be a lot more comfortable for us. And it could be that by giving them a taste of that kind of Western freedom, that they will demand more of it. And so I think that's the risk that President Trump is taking. And let's stand behind him on this and let's say, okay, President Trump, go for it. And let's see what happens, especially if he can get the new Syria, even if they call themselves ISIS, I don't care. If they were to agree that and actually announce that they are recognizing Israel as a state, that would be huge, because there are very few Muslim countries in the Middle East that recognize Israel. We're trying to get the Saudis to do that right now. Saudi, for their part, the Crown Prince praised the move as a new chapter for Syrian stability and growth. He also called for a Palestinian state and sort of obliquely called for Israel to get out of Syria. So this is the kind of duality we have to deal with over there. But just keep in mind that Muslims there's no problem lying to the rest of the world as long as they can advance the cause of Islam. So we could be seeing just a grand ruse being pulled over America's eyes to try to establish that Muslim caliphate in Syria. It's a dangerous, dangerous game. If I was President Trump, I would have done one additional thing, and that would be to tell Sharah that he has to give the Kurds some measure of autonomy in the regions that they control, because the Kurds are not going to give that up anyway. And so Trump could have kept them from fighting over it by making that one of his demands, perhaps. Anyway, that's what that's the main points from President Trump's meeting in Saudi Arabia and meeting with Al Sharah over Syria. He moved on to Qatar today, trying to do some more business deals there. So, and also trying to encourage peace talks for a lasting ceasefire in Gaza. So let's pray for President Trump to be successful in everything that he does. And that's what I got for today. Thanks for watching. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.